Game of the week presented by Fan to Fan Sports Network. We had the Crimson Tide traveling to Baton Rouge, Louisiana to take on the LSU Tigers. The line currently favoring the Crimson Tide 2.5 points. This game will kick off at 7:30 Eastern on ABC. Great. I know we're already both very excited about this game. Huge playoff implications. The loser of this game probably eliminated. Still a little bit of chance, but most likely eliminated. But it's a different type of game. I mean, 12-team playoff. You have a little bit more to look forward to now. I know looking into the year, having the 12-team playoff, it was more of a concern not to have big games like this. But here we are in November, and this just falls into our lap. Greg, what are you seeing from both sides, particularly more so on the offensive side of the ball for both these teams, to say one might be more effective than the other in this matchup?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things in this massive, massive game, obviously you are talking about the playoff implications and what this means for both of these teams. But both of these teams, and specifically the offenses, just like you mentioned, are coming off a bye week. And that is absolutely huge when you're playing a game like this, especially for the Alabama Crimson Tide, the way that they're coming off their bye week after the heartbreaker in Knoxville, coming back home, taking care of a Missouri team where they ran the ball the best that they've ran the ball all season long. They get a bye week. They get to regroup before going to Baton Rouge. I think that's a great sign for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And on the opposite side for LSU, what happened in College Station, it was a tale of two different halves, especially on the offensive end. Now they get a bye week, they get to regroup, and we'll see what happens on Saturday night.
Yeah, definitely. I think you look at the bye weeks and how beneficial they were for both teams, especially given the number of injuries both of these teams have. You look at Alabama, I think a little less banged up, but especially in the secondary. You have Keon Sabb, who has been out since the Tennessee game. He played his heart out in there, and we haven't seen him back, probably severe foot injury. And then Cole Adams, losing him for the season, which is heartbreaking, but he did give it his all in the last few matchups. And then on the flip side, you have LSU, Harold Perkins, I believe, tore his ACL, a number of other guys who have sustained injuries throughout their playing time. But I think you talk about the magnitude of this game. You talk about where it's at, Death Valley, where opponents' dreams come to die. Having it be a night game, I mean, all the hypes around it, I think it's easy to go into a game like this and kind of have your thoughts scattered, to be nervous, to be anxious. I mean, it's kind of the same, similar situation to what Alabama faced when they went to Knoxville to face Tennessee. And I think we both would agree that provides a little bit of home field advantage for LSU. It makes a little bit of ground in that sense. I want to flip over to the defensive side, primarily looking at Alabama's defensive line and how they can make a huge difference in this game. Because going back to last game, we saw Garrett Nussmeier struggle a lot when Texas A&M made changes in the second half, and he was pressured a lot, made a lot of mistakes. So how can Alabama on the defensive line be more effective?
Yeah, do exactly what they did against Missouri. I know Missouri is – quarterback with Brady Cook being hurt and then Drew Pine coming in is not Garrett Nussmeier is not that, but we saw what kind of impact the Texas A&M front seven had on Garrett Nussmeier when they made adjustments in that second half in College Station 2 weeks ago. That's the Alabama front seven is just as if not more talented than that Texas A&M group. Can they make the adjustments as well? Can Kane Womack make those same adjustments in the middle of the game to keep Grant Nussmeier in trouble and looking at his line instead of looking at the coverage downfield?
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. And then, yeah, you have on the flip side again with LSU's defensive line and particularly LSU secondary, who really struggled a lot in that second half against Texas A&M, really got picked apart, and the running game for Texas A&M really prevailed there in the second half and really allowed them to take over and control the rest of the game. How can LSU's defense improve, stop Alabama's running game, and then, of course, rattle Jalen Milroe, who has had issues with that in the past?
Yeah, I think that's a huge key to the game for LSU is stopping the run game. It's obviously one of the main, if not the main reason that they lost in College Station, especially in the second half, that it just kind of imploded for Texas A&M. And Alabama's got a really good running back duo themselves, and Justice Haynes and Jam Miller. And they've had 2 weeks to prepare now, just like I was mentioning, after their most successful rushing performance against Missouri. They had 212 rushing yards against Missouri. Can Alabama replicate that? You talked about the injury to Harold Perkins, how that's had an effect on this LSU defense. That is going to be a major key to the game. If LSU can stop Alabama in the run game, not just with Justice Haynes and Jam Miller, but also keeping contained on quarterback Jalen Milroe, if they're able to keep him in the pocket, make him make those intermediate throws, and then slow down the running game, if they can keep Alabama under 3 yards a carry in this game, they'll walk away with an easy win.
Yeah, I think that brings us to a next point. What are the key points for Alabama to win, and what are the key points for LSU to win? Go ahead and look at Alabama. They had to establish a running game. They had to control the line of scrimmage. I think that is number one on the list. They have struggled to do that in the past. Against Missouri, they were fantabulous at it. And a great word there. And I know, right? But they took care of business against Missouri. This is a different type of beast. That LSU defensive line, I will guarantee you, will come in and fire it up and want to change from the mistakes they made against Texas A&M. So it will be on Nick Sheridan to really coach and call a great game, and then for that offensive line to take advantage and really just dominate the trenches. And then point number two, I think it will come down to the defense getting off the field on third downs. They have struggled continuously in third and long situations. You look at the Vanderbilt game, I think that's one of the most notable, where they could not get to the field on third downs. Vanderbilt controlled time of possession, in which basically allowed them to control the rest of the game. You saw that in the second half versus Georgia, and then some against Tennessee, although recently I think it's been a little bit more cleaned up. But still, it's a big key. And then the last one, I think it's going to come down to Jalen Milroe and the Alabama offense being able to execute in key situations. You talk about the number of times teams get down to Baton Rouge and they struggle to take advantage of the situations they were put in. You don't convert in certain spots. This LSU team will make you pay for it. That is the biggest thing. It has remained a huge thing in this rivalry. You go back several years, you can just pinpoint each game and some of the big plays that have been made in it to allow Alabama and LSU to both had their chances to win games like that. So I think that's another big key. Great for you. What can LSU do to win this game?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is keep Grant Nussmeier clean. And when I say that, there's a lot of different factors that come into that. Obviously, keeping him away from sacks, keeping him from, just like I mentioned earlier, looking at the line. That LSU offensive line is a very good offensive line, filled with 2 NFL tackles on that offensive line. They're very, very good and capable of controlling the line of scrimmage in this game, but they did not do it against Texas A&M. Can they do it? But also establishing a running game, just like you mentioned with Alabama, the importance of establishing a running game in this type of game, in this type of atmosphere is massive. If they're able to establish a running game with Duran, and that will open up so many different things for Grant Nussmeier and Brian Kelly's offense with the playmakers that they have around them, even with the injuries on the defensive end. And just like I mentioned earlier, if LSU is able to keep Alabama for under 3 or under yards per carry, and that's including Jam Miller and Justice Haynes and Jalen Milroe, if they're able to contain him and keep him in the pocket, that's when Alabama has struggled the most this year, and that's when their offense has been the most stagnant, and that's when they're turning the ball over. That's when they're getting off the field too early or not being able to finish drives and stuff like that. That's what you have to do, especially in the atmosphere of Death Valley. If LSU wants to win this game, those are my keys for them to win.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to as well. Currently looking at the line, it is 2.5 points favored in Alabama's way, and then the over-under sitting at 58.5. Gray, who do you like in this game, and do you like the over or the under?
This is an easy game to go back and forth on for sure, and I've definitely been going back and forth on for honestly 2 weeks because we haven't seen either of these two teams since LSU lost in Baton Rouge and Alabama dominated Missouri and Tuscaloosa. Right now, at this moment in time, I think I'm going to pick Alabama and pick Alabama to cover. I think they're going to be able to establish the running game. I trust them to do that more with Jalen Milroe, Jam Miller and Justice Haynes, especially from what I saw against Missouri. I trust that more. It's going to be really, really tough. That atmosphere is going to be absolutely bananas. It would be a fun game to go and witness as a nonpartisan for those two teams, but it's going to be a fun game to watch. Right now, I'm going to pick Alabama, but I'm definitely taking the under in this game. I think these defenses, even though they've had some struggles in the past, these defenses are phenomenal, and this is an old-fashioned LSU versus Alabama rivalry.
All right. Well, getting into this pick, I think I've been nervous for a while now. Obviously, I'm a Bama fan. You can see up there. But I am going to be absolutely as close as I can to being non-biased. I have looked at statistics, injuries. I have taken pretty much everything into account that I could. And going on the road to Baton Rouge, it's not been an easy task for a lot of teams.
No.
The one exception has been Alabama in the past. I know this is a new era. This is Kalen DeBoer's era. This is not Nick Saban. It's not a Nick Saban-led team. This is a completely different situation. But sticking with trends, Alabama going on the road, they are a very, very hungry team. Both teams are back against the wall, but it's going to come down to who wants it more, who's more prepared, and albeit who's more talented. And if you compare the two teams, Alabama has a more talented team. They have the ability and the tools to make the plays they need to make to win this football game. I think Kalen DeBoer in bigger games has been able to coach his best. You look at Georgia, and then you even go back to last year when he was coaching at Washington, and really he took advantage of those big-time matchups and really was on display for the whole world to see. This is one of those games. This is Alabama's last chance to really prove that they belong in the playoffs. Same thing for LSU. And I will take Alabama to win this game and to cover, and I will also take the under. I think weather might play a little part in what goes on here with a few showers expected during game time. But for me, it's going to come down to Jalen Milroe finally getting back to what he does best, and that is making plays and being more of that improviser we expect him to be. I know he hasn't looked the part the past few games. He's kind of looked out of his own, but I think this is a game he gets right and Alabama gets back on track. I think LSU will end up playing a terrific game. I think it's probably going to be one of the best games we see all season long. But Jalen Milroe being the X factor, I think we've talked about time and time again. And Alabama gets a small victory. I would say you're either looking at a field goal or you're looking at a touchdown. Either or, it could even go into overtime. We can get crazy here. But that's what's going to come down to. I appreciate everyone for watching. This has been Fan to Fan Sports Network.